survivor of parental abduction is to make it known to lawmakers and people in the legal system that this is real and we don't deserve to be in prison. This is what you need to do to protect us, especially us as children, right? Good question. Thanks. No, I was not allowed to see my dad again until he had regained custody. In prison, we did not see my mother, we did not see my father. Even the social workers would come and they'd stick us in front of a television for the few minutes they had us. They literally were not trained in what to do with us. The only information I received was on a media screen. And I had all these other kids in this home around us. And, we would just be laughed at and mocked because we'd be on the big screen there, and horrible. So my goal is to truly, the little guy had a great question, pave this path so that kids do not have to go through this. If they do, make it as comfortable as possible. If you're surrounded by people that know how to react and take care of you in these situations, that will at least alleviate the pain. Yeah, right here.
How did your mother afford taking you from all these different countries and everywhere? Was she working? Or?
That's a good question. No, my mother was independently wealthy because of her parents. Her parents funded everything. Her father was extremely vengeful, and what I learned in the future, after all this was disclosed, both of them suffered from bipolar disease. So their vengeance, their extreme behavior was fueled by one another, and this was all out of vengeance. Never once was the best interest of the children put there, myself and my brother, but this was all out of revenge of my father. Yeah, so most people, if they don't have that money, maybe they're going to stay in state. And believe it or not, even the laws in New York right now, it's only a misdemeanor. If a couple separates and the mother takes the children and stays in New York State, right now the laws show it's a misdemeanor, it's not a felony. This would be such a major deterrence. And that's why I'm on board with these groups. Excellent question. Yes, right over here.
With all of the brainwashing that you experienced, how was the initial reunion with your father?
Very traumatic. And at that time, all myself and my brother wanted was to be with our mother. My dad was dead for 2 years as far as I was concerned. And she had brainwashed us to the point where he wasn't the father I remembered. He was this horrible figure she made him out to be, this all-frightening person. And the reunion was very angry at first, and we wanted our mother. And then at that exact point, my mother had attempted suicide many times, her first time being right after we were returned to our father. So as we're on this undercover mission back to Rochester, all the media, everywhere we looked, at the airports, on the newspaper, showed photos of my mother in a hospital gurney. And that made it even worse. It took a long time. It took a lot of therapy. Once we got back and saw that my mother was not honest and that our lives in Rochester were there, my dad rebuilt that house she had burned down for us. And when all the stabilities had started to come back, then I began to trust and realized that tables were turned. And that's why I'm very grateful my dad and I were best friends today. We survived a lot. Yeah, right back there. Need you to speak up.
Why do you keep moving from place to place, you want to know?
Well, she moved us place to place so that we wouldn't get caught. That's a wonderful question. Constantly changing our names, not going to school, the fear of authorities. My mother knew that my father would most likely be looking for us, and so that's why we constantly left. If she had a tip that we were in the media, we would disappear.
Do you have any contact with any of your mother's family?
No, not at this point. My mother and her father had alienated themselves from 2 other siblings. Those 2 other siblings, I hear, lead normal lives. I had heard that some years ago. but they wanted nothing to do with my mother or their parents. So no, the answer is no. I did not learn, and then once my brother did what he did, there was no contact again until I was contacted by a medical examiner that my mother had taken her life. Yep, right back there.
In 1979, it must have been very easy to go from this country to another country, but it seems to still be very easy for any parent just to pick up their children and go from another country. Very seldom someone asks you for the other parent's permission, for the other parent permission. My question is it something that still worries you? Did you ever think of targeting that? Because it seems to me that there's still parents that move from country to country very easily.
Absolutely. We see that in the media constantly. There was a case just a few years ago about the father who married the Brazilian wife, and he was in New Jersey. And when they got divorced, she took her daughter back to Brazil. Getting out of the country, the laws are stricter. With children, just to go up to Canada through Niagara Falls, children do need documentation. Could it be done if there's a parent? I'm not an authority in that area. It's probably more difficult now. Are the laws perfect? From what I've seen of the laws, they need a lot of work. Any other questions at this time?
Scott, thank you.
Sure.
You seem to have dealt with this very well yourself. For all those that are recovering still, the trust and the acceptance of it, how do you see as a whole or percentage? Is it more difficult for others to do it, or is it just the process? It's going to be a long process, lifetime process?
That's an excellent question, yes. The process of surviving this is lifelong. I don't look at it that I survived to this point and I'm never going to have to deal with it again. I have fears, I have anxieties that might be greater than somebody who wasn't in my shoes. I try to define it simply, even though it's not a simple issue. For example, attitude. 90% of it's how we react to it, 10% of what actually happens to us. I try to live by that. It's all about attitude. I turn every situation I go through around. Does it always work? No. But we don't live if we don't open up and attempt to survive. If I couldn't trust, I wouldn't have had the strength to allow Jill into my life and to have a wonderful life now. Is it that simple for everyone? No, it takes a long time. My therapist, Dr. Halpern in Rochester, I spent 10 years with the man and trying to figure all of this out, and he saw me grow through my teenage years. And on our very last visit, I'll never forget it, sat down there and I looked at him, and the only thing I had to say was, I don't need to see you anymore. And I knew, and he looked at me and he said, I've been waiting for you to tell me that. And so it's a long process. Does that mean I don't have more growth? But we're all growing, and it is a constant process. All I can do is to say to someone who's been through it recently, no matter what the crime has been against them, is take the time and recover the proper way. There is no fast cure to this. You live with the scars forever, and it's our attitude. It's what we decide to do with it. I feel empowered being here tonight, being able to speak to each one of you, and as each one of you makes a difference in another child's life, that to me makes me successful. It makes you successful, and giving back, that's the best way of surviving. Thank you.
When your father got custody of you again and you started to go back to school, you and your brother, how did you transition both academically and socially?
Both were extremely difficult. Academically was difficult because I grew up in this suburb of Rochester, New York, and I wanted to be with all of my friends. Here I came back to Rochester after 2 years of no schooling at all, and I had missed the 4th and 5th grade.